Good afternoon and welcome to today's Lunch and Look at Home, Curator's Tour of Enlarging the View. I am Jennifer Dickinson, Director of Education here at the Stark Museum of Art, and we're thrilled to have you. Today's program is going to be about 45 minutes long with a few time for question and answers. We're thrilled to have Sarah Bain here with us today to walk us through the new special exhibition, Enlarging the View. Contemporary photography and connections. Today we are using the focus mode that will just help minimize interruptions. If you have questions during the session, I'm going to ask you to use the chat feature at the bottom. Please just drop those questions into the chat and I will try to get those out to Sarah when it is time for questions and answers. I'm going to give us just another minute or two before we get started, and then we will get going because there is a lot of ground to cover today. We have some great photography and works from our collection to see. So we'll give just another minute or so, Sarah, if that sounds good.
Great.
All right. Well, Sarah, it's 12:01. I want to make sure we make good use of our time today. I'll keep monitoring. I know we've got a few more people planning to join us, but I'm going to turn it over to our curator, Dr. Sarah Bain.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm really grateful to our education department for setting this up and working with me on it, especially on the technical part. So we're so glad to have you today for this special Lunch and Look program. We're going to take a tour of our exhibition, Enlarging the View, Contemporary Photography and Connections. And working on this exhibition has been a great experience, and I want to share that. The exhibition originated and is really focused on a collection of contemporary photographs that the Stark Museum has added to its collection, and thus it relates to the title we chose, Enlarging the View, because we are really enlarging our own view of the art world by having more examples of contemporary art. We're think that's very important to include a contemporary focus in our collections, both for today's viewers and for the future, to have the legacy of today. And we hope that the exhibition will as well enlarge your own view of art and of the contemporary world and of the historic past, because that's the other part of the exhibition. We are connecting contemporary works of art with historic works of art, generally in pairs, as on the left, a photograph by Robert von Sternberg paired with a painting by Oscar Berninghaus, which I'll talk about a little more in depth later. I want to give you, in this talk today, an overview of the exhibition, including some views of the gallery itself, especially for those of you who will not be able physically to visit the Stark Museum during the time the exhibition's on view. So I want to talk about the genesis of the exhibition and how we put it together to give you a little sense of behind the scenes intellectually. You won't see a lot of work things, but I want to talk about how we put the exhibition together conceptually and some of the decisions we made. And then we want to look at some of the key works of art in the collection. And I want to show each of the photographers, each of the contemporary photographers whose work is represented. So we'll look briefly at one work by each of the artists. Welcome to the exhibition itself in our Gallery 5 with its title wall, and our Director of Exhibitions and Collections, Ryan Farrell, did the design and layout, and he chose a color scheme of black and white for the setting. And then I think this scheme really gives a bold environment for the photographs and works on a conceptual level as well. The black and white resonates with most people's ideas of early photography, black and white, imagery created from lights and darks. And of course, photography today is so much more than that, with color photography and the manipulation that artists can do. But it creates that concept of the origin story. The black and white setting for the exhibition also sets up ideas of duality, and that's very much a theme of the exhibition, the pairing of works of art. They're not always in opposition with each other. They're often connected with each other, but still that idea of one item relating to the other is very important. This exhibition also flows differently than some of the exhibitions that we've done in the past. For example, I tend to think very logically and chronologically. So a lot of the exhibits will be based on time. We'll start historically from the early 19th century to the late 19th century, or we'll look at one artist's career from his early juvenile works through the main part of his or her career to the late stage. So chronologically or thematically, we'll have big themes like in the West is Home, where we had 4 different subsets. This exhibition was developed from pairs of works of art. So the order is not as ordained as some, and it really provided a lot of freedom. Ryan really worked on how things looked visually. So I think it's an exhibit that will be very appropriate for browsing, which is what most museum visitors like to do anyway. They like to find a work of art that's meaningful to them. And this exhibition really opens up that possibility. And we hope that that arrangement will especially allow visitors to assert their own order in viewing the exhibition and spark your imagination and creativity. And for this exhibition, we drew from many different parts of our collection. So we think it has a lot of variety, and different types of objects appeal to different types of viewers. We have not only the photographs, we have historic photographic images, we have paintings, sculpture, prints, rare books, including our wonderful natural history publications. We have indigenous arts, we have decorative arts. So there's a little something for everyone. So how did this originate? Well, let's go back to 2016. And really it was a great sort of moment for us. It began with an email of all things. We received through our general mailbox, info@starkmuseum.org, this message concerning the museum project, as it was called. And the staff member who monitored our incoming mailbox forwarded it to me. And she essentially said, you know, is this for real? Because the email let us know that we were being offered the opportunity to receive a donation of works of art by a group of contemporary photographers who had banded together with this name, the Museum Project. And they made their works of art available as donations to museums. They began this as a gratitude project to thank museums that had supported photography through their exhibitions and their collecting programs. And it was a way to provide museums with collection resources, and also to thank them for their historic collections and programs. And they, after several years of success with this project, they expanded, and we were, the Stark Museum of Art was included in the expansion. They offered us the opportunity to choose from a group of photographers and to choose works that would be appropriate for our collection. And I looked at the list of photographers, which you can see in that offering on the left, and I was really intrigued, but recognized a couple of them. I had to learn a lot more as I went along, doing research on the web, looking up artist biographies and their websites. And I was excited about this and started the correspondence with Robert von Sternberg, who was the photographer who really administered this project and really did a yeoman's job. And over the next few months, he sent me numerous emails with, I would get a resume for the artist and a scroll of photographic images from each of them. On the right, you see 3 of von Sternberg's photographs, and this is just how the scroll looked. It would just be images, no titles, no dates, no background. I might have about 30 of these that I would look through. And of course, I would continue to do research. I started finding their websites and learning more about the included artist, and tracked down where some of the photographs had been exhibited previously. Because if we were going to accept these into the collection of the Stark Museum of Art, I need to make a case for how the works of art would serve our mission, if they would fit our collecting policy, that we have the resources to care for them. I look for works that are visually impactful and that I think will have a meaning for our viewers, that we'll use in exhibitions, and that the artist's career shows that the artist will have an impact historically. So after time researching and deliberation and some back and forth, and we ended up choosing 29 photographs by 10 artists, and this is just an array of some of the ones that we chose, but you can see there's quite a variety of approaches in these contemporary works. And the artists would send the individual donations. Each artist donated individually, and we worked deeds of gifts with them and looked at the final works for the determination. And all along, I had great ideas for wanting to get these works of art on view to the public through an exhibition, and started discussing with our exhibition committee about using these new acquisitions. And anytime we plan an exhibition, we start with a so what document where we develop the key ideas of the exhibition and what difference we hope it will make. And in talking with these photographs, talking with their exhibitions committee about these photographs and what we might be doing with them, we talked about their connections with other works of art in our collection. And I thought, well, one of the things we might show the contemporary photographs in one section of a large gallery and include some of the historic works in another section of that gallery. And Jennifer Dickinson, our director of education, said, well, why not put them together? And that just really opened up the exhibition ideas wonderfully. Because it really made a solution that enabled us to see the photographs in new ways. It also allowed us to, in other ways, open up, and we decided to include as well, besides the photographs from the museum project, we had works by 3 other contemporary photographers in our collection that had been recent donations. And so we included those in the checklist. That's the list of items that we're going to have in the exhibition. And this would give us more depth and some other types of connections. So from that, then it was a process of finding works in our collection that had resonance with the contemporary works of art. So next I want to show you some of the pairs that we developed, and I'm showing them through slides. So you're going to not have the proportional differences that you'll see when you see them in person, but we want to make use of the Zoom medium. So a little bit out of context, but if you can, come and see the exhibition, because there's so much richness in seeing the real works of art. Now, obviously, a lot of the connections that we made are going to be based on subject matter. That's really an easy way to make comparisons And yet with this exhibition, we found that it had a lot of richness, and we would start with some that were kind of obvious connections, and it opened up to others with connections that were more abstract or more revealing. One of the sort of obvious ones in this pairing, we have Barry Anderson's photograph, Four Trees, Arizona, compared with Joseph Henry Sharpe's Coconino Forest, Grand Canyon, Arizona. Both landscape works, both focusing significantly on trees in the landscape, and both dealing with a specific specific place and landscape, Arizona. And many of us have ideas of Arizona as a desert place. And right away, Joseph Henry Sharpe's painting contradicts that in showing us a very lovely forest, a very dense stand of timber. He uses the entire picture plane for the trees, and we see the beautiful light breaking through. A lovely representation of an unexpected representation of Arizona. Barry Anderson's Arizona is a little more like a stereotypical idea of the desert landscape. And yet one of the concepts Anderson works with is the intrusion of human presence in the landscape without necessarily showing a human, but we see the action of humans, in this case, in the planting of 4 trees. They're roughly the same size, evenly spaced, and they kind of create this screen right in the front of the landscape. So each of the artists upends a traditional idea of an Arizona landscape painting, and gives us new ideas about how trees work in a particular landscape and how they can create both beauty and a sense of power and mastery of the landscape. Sheila Pinkel has done a series of photographs that she wanted to make camera-less, and she worked with the medium of xerography, X-rays. She is very interested in the interior of her subjects, both in natural history, as we see with Thistle, and in her other works where she does cultural history. She's really trying to get inside her subjects. We pair that with Edward Marshall Beam's goldfinches with Scottish thistle. Edward Beam is very concerned with exterior beauty. We see the beauty of the birds, the goldfinches, the main focus, and yet the thistle plays a very important role in creating the elegance of his composition. So we have internal beauty and external beauty, something that investigating is very important in our contemporary world. Sometimes the subject matter might not be as obvious on the face of it. With Robert von Sternberg's photograph of a gas station. Well, we don't have too many 19th century gas stations, but we certainly have a similar type of respite and refueling in his painting of in Burning House's painting of the faithful ponies. We have the horses, the transportation waiting outside what's probably a saloon, while inside the riders of those horses are refreshing themselves. But both artists, von Sternberg and Burning House, the sense of light and dark is very important in how they compose their works. Von Sternberg has a very modern sensibility with the very intense light and the very deep dark of the night scene. We have the very sharp angles of the gas station structure receding into the distance, probably in this, you can't see too easily, but when you see the photograph in the gallery, in the distance, and just in the very subtly, you can see a large 18-wheeler truck that is our equivalent of the faithful ponies in terms of transportation. Burning House's painting is very nostalgic with our ideas of the Old West. Von Sternberg's is very modern. Will it, however, become a nostalgic image for future generations who maybe will be going to charging stations instead of gas stations with those pumps at night? Now, I talked, and most of the exhibition is based on pairs, but as well, in a number of cases, the photographs just seem to have so many connections that we did a few triplets where we connected a photograph with more than one work of art. And it was especially important when there seemed to be really significant reverberations. In this case, we have Robert von Sternberg's White Bison paired with two works of art. First, with William Herbert Dutton's Last of the Buffalo. Von Sternberg has done a photograph of actually what's a concrete buffalo, a kind of sign that exists at a business in Oregon. It's white because of its concrete nature. He photographed it at night with its artificial lights on it and creates this kind of eerie, ghost-like representation of a buffalo. This could be, in essence, the last buffalo that is intimated by William Herbert Dutton's title for his painting, Last of the Buffalo. Dutton, the title of that painting is a 19th century type of concept. It was a great concern for the disappearance of the buffalo. Albert Bierstadt painted two monumental works on the Last of the Buffalo, lamenting the possible disappearance of this great monarch of the plains. And Dutton responded to that doing his own version. Interestingly enough, in some ways, Dutton's painting seems to contradict the very title that he chose. It shows a buffalo in a very verdant landscape, very peaceful and pastoral, white fluffy clouds ahead. Perhaps the only hint that these are the last of the buffalo is the mountain setting, and that they perhaps are pushed to the limits, no longer on the plains, but finding refuge in the mountains. Dutton seems to speak to the persistence of the buffalo through his imagery, which of course is the case. Fortunately, the buffalo has not become extinct, and we can enjoy at least seeing these majestic animals in settings like Yellowstone National Park today. Von Sternberg's bison also reminds us as well the important connection of bison to the indigenous peoples of North America. The bison furnished food for many, particularly those of the northern plains and some of the woodland areas. And the white buffalo could be considered by some of the peoples as a holy apparition. I pair von Sternberg's photograph here with Carl Bodmer's print of the dance of the Mandan women. They are performing a ceremony to invoke the presence of the buffalo. They are literally calling buffalo to come and provide food and sustenance for their people. And the white buffalo had special significance. The dancers in this print are wearing cylindrical hats that are made of white buffalo fur. And then the principal dancer is wearing a robe of white buffalo. So this print. And I have in the exhibition, there's an extended label explaining the subject matter and the connection of the white buffalo through the text for viewers who most of us do not know the stories without additional information. And then that gives particular resonance to the sort of mysterious quality that von Sternberg gives to that concrete buffalo in his photograph. Now, linking in subject matter can often include stories of human people. And in this case, we have two portraits, okay, obviously, portraits of men, but the connection goes deeper. And then each of these is a portrait of an artist. On the left is Bonnie Schiffman's photographic portrait of Richard Diebenkorn, and on the right, E. Martin Henning's painting of Oscar E. Burninghouse. Schiffman shows Diebenkorn really at a moment of repose, showing the artist completely at rest in his career. This is not the active working artist. He is seated quite comfortably, wearing his corduroys and sneakers. We don't see the artist's tools. We see his sort of intellectual setting with books around him. And in the background, one of his masterworks, Ocean Park, number 94. Diebenkorn was a leader of the West Coast form of abstract expressionism. And this shows a successful point in the artist's career when he is able to relax and enjoy his success. On the right is Henning's portrait of one of his fellow Taos Society of Artists. He also shows the artist without really an indication of his tools, of his career as an artist. We see a simple portrait against a dark background. Burninghouse is represented wearing really a suit and tie and waistcoat, very much almost a businessman. The artist Hennings is working in a portrait style that came from his training in Europe, and particularly in Munich, showing very simplified backgrounds, dark backgrounds, in which the individual figure emerges. This portrait of Burninghouse was shown in exhibitions in Taos. There, everyone would know who Burninghouse was in this small village, would know that he was an artist. Instead, this presented him as an individual person, as someone worthy of photographs, and worthy of portraiture, rather, I keep using photographs, worthy of portraiture, just on his own, just for who he is. One of the more intriguing comparisons, and we've had numerous responses to this pairing, is Melanie Walker's photograph Rabbit, which we have paired with John James Audubon's lithograph Gray Rabbit. Walker made this work as part of a series that she called Endangered Species. And when I saw that it was under that series, I wondered, well, why would she consider a rabbit as an endangered species? But she has explained that the series and why it is called that. She did the Endangered Species Project imagines a time after all the animals are gone. People dress in animal costumes to reenact the hunt. So Walker is concerned with the threat to animals, and she is making photographs that are kind of a dystopian image of what the future might bring without animals. And she has made a series of photographs that are really kind of surreal. They began with realistic imagery, but in the jarring juxtapositions and in the manipulation, she creates a kind of otherworldly view. She creates her original photographs by distressing the image, distressing the negative. She does things like she applies rubber cement to her negative, which changes the composition, and immerses them in a solution. And that creates the textural effects that seem so mysterious in the background and surrounding the rabbit. She the sense evokes a lot of mystery and emotion. Interestingly enough, John James Audubon approaches his rabbit more from the sense of being a natural historian. He is making this image of a gray rabbit as part of a series as well. He is documenting all the mammals of North America that bear their young alive and that are four-legged, the viviparous quadrupeds of North America. So he's trying to specifically provide information about what animals look like and how they behave. And yet, in works like this gray rabbit, he also introduces a great deal of human emotion. He often, in his representations of animals, includes sort of anthropomorphic storytelling. When one looks at this grouping of three rabbits, there almost seems to be a kind of family here. The large male who is over the entire grouping, the more timid and contained female, but who is directly interacting with the small, timid baby rabbit. And then the life story of Audubon and the history around this project provides even more indication of the emotion that went into this work. On the back of the drawing that Audubon made to produce this lithograph, he wrote, "I drew this hare during one of the days of deepest sorrow I have felt in my life, and my only solace was derived from my labor. This morning, our beloved daughter Eliza died at 2 o'clock. She is now in heaven, and may our God ever bless her soul." So he drew this rabbit family at the time of the death of, it was actually his daughter-in-law, but he called her his daughter because there was such a close family relationship between Audubon and his sons and their wives. And that great sorrow, I think, added to the poignancy of this image. And so that each of the artists includes a great deal of emotion into their individual works of art. Another comparison where the subject is somewhat similar, but is not at all the same, is Richard Buswell's Bedroom, a photograph of a deserted Western home that speaks of lost dreams. Time has ravaged the interior, and the exterior has entered into this home, and it's been deserted. This is a reminder that life in the West was not always a successful story, and that contrast with the relentless optimism of the Westford Hoe Glassware series by Glenda and Sons. This was a glassware set of platters and compotes and cups and glasses with subject matter about the really the manifest destiny Westford settlement, represented by sturdy log cabins, a landscape of felled log trees, and animals playing in the landscape, but also leaving the landscape open for a settlement. We have the very positive view of the West in Westward Ho Glassware. We have the dissolution of dreams in Bedroom. And another interesting resonance in this work, the Bedroom, part of the story is that the glass in the windows has broken, allowing the snow to blow into the interior. And of course, the actual medium of Westward Ho is glass. So there's a connection between the representation of media and the actual media. With Don Russell's portrait of Anthony Nulas and Tarna Rina, we have a contemporary photograph of what seems to be a romantic encounter. And the figures on horseback adds to that sense, with the two riding together on one horse with the enveloping pose. We've paired that with two illustrations by William Herbert Dunton of men and women riding horseback together in the landscape. Each of these is part of a narrative as illustrations for stories in books and magazines. And in the extended labels, we include some information on how the stories went and whether they really are romantic encounters, which may give the viewer a chance to analyze or to question whether the artist is how he is using the figures on horseback to tell a story of romance in the West. There are indications of stylistic similarities between some of the works. One of the ones I wanted to highlight is just the way that two artists use framing devices in their presentations of Western scenes. Our photographer, Michael Stone, represents through manipulated photographic imagery a Studebaker car driving through a landscape, and he uses photoshopped images of frames to set off his automobile and also to obscure it in certain ways. On the right, we have Alfred Jacob Miller's idyllic painting of lassoing wild horses. We see Native American figures galloping across the plains in this beautiful sunlit scene. And Miller painted this work in an oval shape so that in framing it, one could have it's on a rectangular canvas, but it allows for a rectangular exterior frame with an inset that creates this oval view. He is making associations with oval compositions in Renaissance art, which is often used to elevate the subject. And I think both of these artists, the photographer Stone and the painter Miller, are using these framing devices to assert this is art. Look at this subject as a work of art and contemplate it both aesthetically and what it has as meaning in a larger sense. Darrell Curran and Walter Uffer each work with ideas of self-identity and with layering and the building of images. Darrell Curran's photograph, Ghost, uses experimentation in the photographic imagery. He layered his images. He used enlarged negatives and double exposed, a family negative. His work hints at a surreal narrative in the evocation of a figure, in the romanticism of the crashing waves against the rocky landscape, but it's a narrative for the viewer to construct on his own. Walter Uffer has painted a self-portrait, which he calls Fantasies. So he is also, through the title, sort of allowing the viewer to speculate as to what the fantasy is. He too has a ghost in his figure. in the illusionistic representation of an Indian figure that is inserted between the artist and his specific subject, a landscape painting that he is in the process of creating. Does Uffer intend this ghostly figure to be a sign of the artist's creative power, that he can conjure up this figure? Does it represent the idea of the vanishing American Indian, which Uffer was concerned with? Well, I think he challenges the viewer to interpret this work, as does Darrell Curran in his work, Ghost. There are also stylistic affinities between painter and photographer. On the left is Todd Walker's Red Canyon. On the right, Ernest Leonard Blumenshine's Rio Grande Canyon. Both of the artists doing a landscape, essentially choosing a high viewpoint, looking down at the rocks. Walker presents a landscape totally void of sky, immersing us into the view down into the canyon. Blumenshine, a little indication of clouds, but we focus primarily on the surface and on looking down to the water that he has painted to have the same weight really as the rocks surrounding it. Todd Walker began with a photograph, but he used his photograph then to make a photolithograph, and he manipulated the surface texture in the lithograph to have the wonderful intrusions of the artist's line and those amoeba-like representations on the surface of the rocks, calling attention to the form of the canyon, and yet drawing away from that and making it an idealized image. Blumenshine takes the idea of a landscape and breaks it up into blocky painterly strokes, creating a surface liveliness and a similar abstracting of the landscape, each working with different media, but reveling in the artistic possibilities of their medium. Kenda North, a photographer, and William Sharpe, artist and lithographer, each worked with the visual possibilities given by water. North literally photographs underwater. Her photograph on the left, Touch, is part of a series she calls Submerged, and she literally goes underwater. And in this state of being submerged, she says, we're brought to a place of sensory awareness in uncertain reality. Light reflections and the confusion of materials and figures produce a world both mysterious and defined by light. She creates beauty out of her materials, the human touch, and plant materials as they are reflected underwater. Sharpe has a very different approach. He is, like Audubon, whom we previously discussed, working more in a natural history mode. He needs to tell us about the appearance and the botany of the great water lily of America called Victoria Regia. He has also created a series of 6 representations of the water lily in bloom. So we get a series, and he shows the water lily floating on water. So we have reflection playing into our perception of what the water lily is, providing both information and yet visual enhancement of great beauty. This publication that the intermediate stages is part of was one of the earliest versions of chromolithography in North America. So it was groundbreaking as a material as well. Another connection between the works of art can be in artistic collaboration. In this case, Robert Fichter, whose photograph is above, we've connected with two different examples of artistic collaboration. In this comparison, we have Fichter's representation of DC's prints on porch. The artistic collaboration comes through those prints hanging. Those are prints by Darrell Curran, who you saw earlier, his photograph of Ghost. Curran and Fichter worked together. In this case, they were at the same artistic retreat. We see them working in nature. That collaboration often enhances each artist's abilities and ideas. Same type of collaboration came about when Charles Marion Russell and Philip R. Goodwin went on sketching trips together outside in the Montana landscape. Each of those artists grew by their association together and by the works that they made in tandem. Another form of artistic collaboration can be seen in the photographs by Edward S. Curtis, in this case of Carrack baskets, where he's showing the basketry work of several specifically unidentified Carrack artists, but who must have collaborated in their tradition of making baskets. And in this case, both of them show us art and nature directly interacting. We so often take art from nature, but we take it outside of nature. Both Fichter's photograph and Edward Curtis's photogravures show works of art directly interacting with their natural setting. And then for the final grouping, our photograph shows a subject, Georgia O'Keeffe, and we're able to pair it with one of her actual works of art, in this case, her beautiful painting, Not From My Garden. William Cliff did the portrait photograph of Georgia O'Keeffe relatively late in her career, and his stunning photograph shows the artist in a very simple background by creating the large expanse of space around her. He creates an aura of mystery as well, and with her own self-identity and the clothing she wears in her physical presentation, he captures that in his work, and we see the kind of simplicity that she represents then in her own work of art, where we focus very closely on the floral plant. We were able to see the lines of the work, but of course, there's a difference in that she shows us the beautiful color of the work, and it stands out so much from the muted background. So we see how that simplicity comes to work in the self-identity of the artist as well as in her own work of art. And then just for sort of a lagniappe, we paired the William Cliff photograph with a painting by E. Martin Hennig's Old Spanish Woman to show the kind of tradition in New Mexico that in which Georgia O'Keeffe is working in her career, and how New Mexico and its environment is inspiring and enriching her art. These are just a few of the connections that I hope that viewers can make as they see Enlarging the View, contemporary photography and connections in person in our galleries. The exhibition will be on view through August 27th, and we'll have some other events to encourage people to participate and view the exhibition. And we also make the works available on our website. So we'll be sharing some information later on how to easily access the exhibition works of art through our website and provide you some links to more information about the individual artists, the photographers, because they have such fascinating careers, and the works that we have are only a small part of the wonderful contribution that these artists make to our artistic environment and to our view of the world. So I hope you'll have a chance to come and view the exhibition in one form or another. Thank you for coming today, and I'll turn it back to Jennifer in case we have questions from the audience.
And give me just a second, Sarah. I'm getting that turned over. Give me one moment, friends. There we go. Perfect. Sarah, thank you so much for that program. What a great opportunity to learn more about this. I am going to turn off our focus mode. And if you would like to turn on your video, you certainly are welcome to. If you have questions, now is a great time to turn on that screen and your microphone if you'd like to ask a question. While we give people a chance to think about those questions, Sarah, I wanted to ask you, what are the future acquisition plans for photography? Do you see photography, our collection of photography, growing here at the Stark Museum of Art? Is that your hope?
Yes, it certainly hope so. And I think in general, we need to speak to the growth of the contemporary collection as a whole. It is, I think, very important to add to the museum's holdings. And we're working right now on a future acquisition that will be another group of photographs. Another generous donor has approached us, and we're in the process of working with that donor to acquire a group of photographs from the 1970s on a very interesting subject. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to finalize that project in the near future. And so we're very fortunate that we've had these donations. This has made it possible to add to our collection, and we're particularly grateful to the artists who have donated and to other donors. We'll be working more in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. I've got a couple of questions from the chat box. The first one is, what is your favorite pairing or trio from the show?
Oh, that is really hard because it changed. It changes as I work on it more. We're doing some of these pairings in Facebook post. So those of you who follow us on Facebook, please, or if you don't, that's one way to see more of the pairings, because I tried to do a number of them. The Kenda North photographs are just so beautiful, and they have such interesting connections. It was very hard for me to stop. Let's see, I didn't want to talk too much, but this is another one of my favorite pairings. Kenda North's bouquet number 12, sunflowers with a Hopi plaque, which now it doesn't work as well in this photograph, but this is one where you really need to look, because as you look at this plaque and focus your eyes, you realize it's a flower, and it is a sunflower. And that is the specific subject matter connection between these two works. But as well, there's other resonance in the way that bouquets are used and the way the plaque relates to the life of the Hopi people. So that was a pairing that I didn't include in the formal talk, but it's one of my favorite. And the Melanie Walker surreal images, I just love what she did with those distress negatives, but her endangered species, as well as the Audubon. We have another one of a parrot paired with a John Gould natural history publication that includes some beautiful prints of parrots that were done from the natural history perspective, but they're so gorgeous because of the coloring. So that's another one to see, and that I'll probably be doing a Facebook post on that.
Wonderful. Sarah, thank you so much. Our next question is, how can we watch the recording? The recording will be made available on the museum's Facebook page and our YouTube page. It usually takes us about a week to get the recording up online. We try to work quickly, but if you look within a week, it'll be out. I also send an email to anyone who's registered with the direct link to that. So if you want to come back and look more closely, hear Sarah speak again about these, you certainly can do that. So our Stark Art and History YouTube channel, the Stark Museum of Art Facebook page, they're also available online at starkmuseum.org, and you'll get an email reminder when that is available. All right. Any other questions or any other thoughts you'd like to share, Sarah?
Yeah, this was one I didn't get to, I left out, but I left it at the end so I could, if I had an encore moment, because I showed the other Michael Stone as it is on the gallery, so you didn't get to see a close-up of it. This is his Western art #2. And he shows a truckload of art is the way I interpreted. But again, with that wonderful framing device, and then he manipulates the interior image. Is Western art going off into the distance? Is it going to disappear in a cloud of dust? And we paired it with Charles Marion Russell, Friend Goodwin. And at first, this is one of those, but it actually is the equivalent of a truckload. He is showing a early 20th century freighter. This is a wagon that is carrying freight, just as the truck carried freight, although it's literally drawn by a team load of mules. And of course, Russell, this is his self-portrait, is the true epitome of Western art. So this is true Western art, and Michael Stone is giving us Western art disappearing into the landscape. And Mark Catesby, we didn't have a great photograph of this, but I love his representations of fish compared to Sheila Pinkel's 2 fish shrink wrap from Safeway.
Well, and Sheila Pinkel gives me the last comment that just popped up is, it's great how many female artists that this show highlights. I believe there are 4: Sheila Pinkel, Melanie Walker, Bonnie Schiffman, and Kenda North.
Yes. So that's another way we have enlarged our collection, by having more diversity in the artist biographies, and something that as well we're looking at as we expand the collections.
Well, Sarah, I'm going to be looking forward to these Facebook posts to kind of learn more about these. Thank you so much for your time today sharing with us. And thank you to all of our participants who made time during their lunch hour to join us. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you will have the opportunity to come visit us in person. If not, take advantage of those online opportunities to see these works. The pairings really are quite incredible. And we are just so thankful to have the opportunity to share them with you. I hope you have a good afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next lunch and look at home. All right. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.
Bye.